Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this evening. You are here for the Redistricting Monterey County Community Workshop. I'm going to announce that we do have interpretation available in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por unirse con nosotros. Aquí estamos en la Junta para la redistribución de líneas de la mesa directiva de los supervisores del condado de Monterrey. Este es un taller comunitario y si necesita interpretación en español, pueden oprimir el icono del mundo que está a su lado derecho abajo de su página y ahí pueden entonces escuchar la traducción en español. Y si acaso tienen preguntas, por favor póngalo en el chat y de ahí se van a leer las preguntas según como estén anotadas y les daremos las respuestas aquí en inglés con la interpretación en español. So if you have questions as we move along, please feel free to use the chat to add your questions and we will go ahead and answer them as we go. And some at the end if that's appropriate. So I will introduce myself. I am Rosemary Soto. I am with the County of Monterey and particularly in the County Administrative Office. It is my assignment to lead the effort, which is going to be this redistricting process for Monterey County Board of Supervisors. And with me today, I am so honored to welcome our panelists. We have Sharon Miller, who is the Vice President and of Voter Services Co-Director of the League of Women Voters of Monterey County. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you for being here with us. Also with us is Mary Claypool. She is the first Vice President of Monterey County branch of the NAACP, and she is also a trustee for the Monterey County Office of Education Board of Trustees. And also with us is Andrew Sandoval. He is the LULAC District 12 Director, and he comes to us from Salinas as well. And thank you, Andrew, for accepting the invitation to be here. Thank you, all of you, all three of you are bringing some great perspective to this work. And so we welcome you today. So our agenda for today is quite simple. We are here to talk about what is redistricting. It's an exciting time for us here in Monterey County because redistricting is happening. Some of you remember that last year, one of the biggest areas of our work here in Monterey County was the 2020 census. And so the next project, what comes after the 2020 census, which is an equally important area of our democracy in this country and in the state and here in this county, is redistricting, and that comes after the census data is completed. And the last item that we really just want to touch on and talk about is how can you get involved? This affects you. Anyone who lives here in Monterey County will be affected and impacted by the redistricting process. So those are the two things we're going to talk about. That's it. Just what is redistricting and how can you get involved? Why should you get involved as well? So what is redistricting? I'm going to invite you in the chat, or if you want to raise your hands, if you can see it. How many of you are aware? How many of you know what is redistricting? I see a few hands going up. We've got a couple of people who feel that they know. That's great. Okay, so some of you are aware. I'm glad to see that. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to who's going to give us a little bit more details about what is redistricting. Sharon, tell us some more about this.
Okay, redistricting is when we redraw districts after the census so that each has the same number of residents. A district is defined as an area of a county or city, especially one that is regarded as a distinct unit because of a particular characteristic. This could be economic or social ties, values, and interests. That's what can make a district.
Thank you, Sharon. And here the image we see is we're looking at 4 districts. In Monterey County, we have 5 districts, but for the sake of an illustration, this shows you how each district has an equal number of residents, and that's the goal of redistricting. But tell us, Mary, what happens why do we have to do this every 10 years?
Well, political lines must be redrawn so that the population in each district is roughly equal in size, and the maps do not dilute the voting power of communities of color. But the reason that they change is people move out of the area, new people move into the area, children that are born become of voting age and start to vote. People pass away, obviously. And then we have gentrification of a neighborhood. They change over time. So the maps and the lines need to represent the communities so that everybody has a voting power and their voices are heard.
Thanks, Mary. And Andrew, talk to us about, how does this, Mary talked to us about how it happens, how the population sizes change over time, and tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, every 10 years, the district lines have to be redrawn. Got to make sure that every district is even a number again. Redistricting typically happens the year following the census, which is this year, which determines how many people are living in the US and where. So census data is then used to draw new district lines, so each district has an equal number of people.
Yeah, so where we live is what matters, right? So if you live in District 1 in the Salinas area, in District 2 in the northern part of the county, your districts might have changed a little bit in terms of population. District 3 over in South County, there may have been some great changes there, or District 4 and on the peninsula, or kind of bordering some Salinas, part of Salinas, and into Marina and Seaside, and then District 5 out on the southern part of Salinas and Pebble Beach, Monterey and Pacific Grove, Big Sur. We might have had some changes in any of these communities, and so that's right. Every 10 years, we've got to look at these numbers, and so that census data is coming to us soon. So, Mary, when it comes to communities of color and how the voting power is also, it represents not just the race and ethnicity and that makeup. There's other interests, other areas of interest. But tell us a little bit more about this in particular.
Well, historically, redistricting has been used to disenfranchise certain communities, and that's done by dispersing the voting powers over multiple districts. If you look at the example on the screen, in the 4 districts depicted, each district only has one non-white person. Hypothetically speaking, if white people and people of color had opposing interests, the people of color would never have the opportunity to have their interests represented because they can always be outvoted. That's also gerrymandering, which I think Sharon is going to talk a little bit about. But there has been a history of federal, state, and local officials using the redistricting process to exclude people of color from getting their vote heard and their interests met.
Thank you, Mary. And this is a big part about why even on this entire process, it's important that we have community representation from all of our communities, including communities of color, on the Advisory Redistricting Commission, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But Sharon, tell us about gerrymandering. Mary mentioned that, not everybody knows what that is and how does that happen. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, racial gerrymandering is the intentional manipulation of the redistricting process to reduce the political power of a certain racial group. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 protected voters against racial gerrymandering by requiring states to prove their changes to voting systems, including redistricting, so that they would not have a discriminatory effect. Partisan gerrymandering is when districts are drawn in a way to give an unfair advantage to one political party, group, or incumbent. The Supreme Court had the opportunity to set federal standards when states draw their districts to curb partisan gerrymandering. Instead, the court ruled to allow states to make their own determinations about partisan gerrymandering. Oftentimes, partisan gerrymandering is a way for politicians to get away with racial gerrymandering. Oh, that old word gerrymandering, that's a bad one. Now, racial gerrymandering is not legal, and partisan gerrymandering is prohibited by California state law. But that doesn't mean that it still happens, sometimes intentionally, sometimes it's the inadvertent result of redistricting if we don't participate.
Mhm.
Have all fought for decades, centuries sometimes, for the right to vote. So this is the opportunity to make sure that that vote counts. That's why we should all be interested in, and hopefully some of us or many of us will participate in the redistricting process.
Thank you, Sharon. That is so true. It is, many of our ancestors, right, our elders have fought for the right to vote and to be engaged. Civic, in the civic engagement is so important. This is our democracy. So, Andrew, when we are talking about getting involved, Sharon is encouraging the public to get involved and get, really take us home with some more of those points. What do you think about how does this affect us in terms of our voting power?
Well, the reality is when we organize, we can elect candidates of our choice, of our community's choice. If you look at the image, we have the same 4 districts as before. However, the way the lines were drawn allows for one of the district to have 3/4 of the people be people of color. As you can see in the slide, the people didn't change where they were. The only thing that changed was where the lines were drawn. So during the redistricting process, if a majority of people of color can be drawn together, the Voting Rights Act actually requires it. So the Voting Act rights was signed into law in 1965 and was a major victory for the civil rights movement.
So we've got to take that home with us in terms of, it being a victory. We can't just let it sit on the shelf, right? This is why we have to get involved. And here is the timeline of how redistricting is happening in Monterey County. So we know that the apportionment data of the census, the 2020 census, was delivered to the states in April, in the end of April. So that determined the congressional seats for California. California lost 1 seat because of an undercount. We did not have, and you all know that in 2020 that, we had the pandemic and the census experienced many challenges, which has caused much delay in receiving that data. So there's a lot to really point to as to factors about why we might have had a very much an impacted census count. But nevertheless, we have to move forward and really work hard to make sure that we have a fair and impartial redistricting process. So we're expecting that the states will receive the redistricting data on August 16th. And then by September 23rd, the state of California will be releasing the adjusted data. This is adjusted data. When we talk about that, it means that the census data that is initially sent to the state does not include the incarcerated population. So the states have to adjust the data to make sure that the incarcerated population is accounted for in the counties of their origin. And so when we receive that data from the state, then we begin to draw the lines. And that is a big community process. Actually, the community process starts before that. It starts in August, or maybe even before that, when we are looking for individuals who are going to join the newly formed Advisory Redistricting Commission. And so the Advisory Redistricting Commission is going to be a group of 15 representatives from each of the districts, a total of 3 for each district. And the Board of Supervisors will appoint the commission, a total of 15 people. And what we will be doing together is engaging the community and coming to the public about communities of interest, and learning more about, you know, what is important to you in your community and what are your values, again, because you want to be able to make sure that we have not just the equal amount of population, but we also want to make sure that that is taken into account when we are redrawing the lines. So the entire process, we have to have a completed plan approved by the Board of Supervisors by December 15th. So that means we don't have a whole lot of time to actually draw the lines, but between this time that you see here, between September and December. So we're going to work very closely, very quickly, and super frequently. And so that's why we're here, because we want to make sure that you know that this is happening in your community. And we also want to make sure that if you're interested and you're available, that you commit to joining the Advisory Redistricting Commission. And so that is how you can get involved. You can become a commissioner, and you can go to our website, which is here, it's noted here. We'll go ahead and include it not only here, but also in the chat, as well as on the Facebook page. And it's just the county webpage with the / of redistricting. So it's co.monterey.ca.us/redistricting. Or is that a /? Am I saying it wrong? So, and you also want to follow us on Facebook and Instagram of 2020 Census MC. That is our address. So stay updated, you know, get to know what's going on, attend the meetings that that are going to be happening throughout the county. We will have most of them on Zoom, if not a hybrid of in-person and Zoom. We've all become very familiar with Zoom. I will tell you that one of the reasons why it is so, one of the ways in which we're wanting to make sure that that we're accessible to you to be involved is that we're going to host most of our meetings in the evenings, like right now at 6 o'clock, and on weekends, most likely on Saturdays. And that's going to be really important because we know that a lot of people go to school, they work, and so it's hard to attend these community meetings. So we want to make sure that these sessions are available to you during the time that you can make it and attend and have your voice be heard. So the biggest thing that we need is for you to become a part of the commission, the Advisory Redistricting Commission. Aside from that, I want to go ahead and just let me go to the questions. It looks like we have a couple of these. We have one question. Can you talk about this being the first redistricting process since the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the 1965 Voting Rights Act? Does anybody have a comment or a response to that, or would like to elaborate on that?
What's the actual question?
Can you talk about this being the first redistricting process since the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the 1965 Voting Rights Act?
Well, I'm sure most people understand the importance of what the Supreme Court did. And there's been an effort by the NAACP and other groups to try and overturn that and get some of the rights that were taken away back, get it back. And not only the Supreme Court, but just recently, I can't remember how many states have actually taken different avenues and venues and have approved so many different laws restricting some of the voting rights. So I would urge people to get involved. I know the redistricting process, most people think it doesn't really impact them directly because one, they're not familiar with the process, and two, they don't understand that they are looking at helping redraw the lines that impact them directly regarding the cities, the schools, the ability to fix the roads within their cities, small businesses, resources, because elected officials have a lot of power and they obviously vote on a lot of different issues. So I urge people to, one, get a better understanding of redistricting and how it does impact you and your family directly, and then get involved. I served on the redistricting committee 10 years ago, and I too was reluctant to, one, get involved, to give my time, and didn't understand what the process really was. But they do give you all the information you need, and they're very thorough. And it did make a difference when the lines were drawn, that my perspective and my voice was heard. So I do encourage people to get involved.
Thank you, Mary. Sharon, go ahead.
I would like to ditto what Mary has been saying. And I'll also mention that the League of Women Voters at the national level is pushing for federal regulation, federal legislation that would strengthen voting rights. Now, we're lucky that we live in California, because right now it seems to be like the states are in the driver's seat as far as making voting accessible or not, and making it easier or more difficult, or blocking certain people from being able to vote, making it more difficult for certain people. We are lucky we live in California. We have very strong laws at this point that are making sure that people are able to vote. Then again, if we don't use that right, if we don't participate in democracy, if we don't participate in redistricting, it's all going to be moot. So let's work together.
Thank you, Sharon. And then I did see another question of, I wanted to apply to be on the commission, but I changed my voter political affiliation in the last 2 years. Am I disqualified? So the answer is no, that is not necessarily a disqualification. I think you'd want to be able to note that in your application. But it's not necessarily going to disqualify your eligibility. So we still encourage you to apply of any of these changes. And there is room on the application to share anything more about you that would be helpful to the supervisors as they make a decision, a selection to appoint. So that would be helpful. Another question, the state of California has set up rules and explicit guidelines for the redistricting process that were in the Voting Rights Act. Thank you, Arlene, that is to Sharon's point, and Mary also made a point about that. So excellent. Great. So this really takes us, before we close out, because we've covered everything we really needed to cover here today. I just want to give Mary, Sharon, and Andrew the opportunity to give us some closing remarks, some last points. I know you all have encouraged folks to be a part of the commission, but is there one last statement that you'd like to make for our audience today?
Well, I'll go first. I just want to commend you, Rosemary, on your work on the census and really driving this redistricting to be transparent and really community driven. And to all the community out there, I just want to encourage the community to reach out to Rosemary and to be part of this important process. We want to make sure that every vote counts, and we want to make sure that this is a fair and, like I said, transparent process. And in order for that to happen, we need the community to step up and help be part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Sharon, do you have any parting words?
Talking about communities of interest, we're all part of some numerous communities. Each of us is, we live here, but we're part of this community or that community because of interest, values, what religion, race, whatever it is. We belong to different communities. And so I think it's important that we realize how easy it is to give testimony. There are going to be redistricting commission meetings in each of the 5 district county supervisorial districts in Monterey County. So there will be one that's close to us, or we can do it on Zoom. There are some electronic tools that will help you to draw a map of this is where we really belong, but you don't have to be a techie because I'm not. You can just give oral testimony. You can give written testimony. You can say, you know, from this street to that street to here, we all work the same kind of jobs and we all play at the same park and we all go to the same library, and we should really be kept together as a group. We should be, you know, kept in the same district. So don't be afraid of getting involved. There are translators for, you know, various languages, if that's something that's concerning you. But hey, all of us can be involved in that redistricting process.
Thank you, Sharon. Mary, we'll close out with you.
Well, I think I'd just like to say that we all know that redistricting will determine the political representation for the next 10 years. It's carried out at all levels of government, from our local schools to our city councils to state legislature and the United States representative. Black communities have an important role to play in the redistricting, just like all the other ethnic groups. And we need to ensure that the process is fair, transparent, our voices are heard, our needs are addressed, and most of all, our rights are protected. We need to value our vote, value our political power, and our voice in democracy. And the only way we can do it is to be involved at the table in the process where it matters, when it counts.
Thank you, Mary. Spot on. I want to invite you all, if you have been thinking about joining the Advisory Redistricting Commission and you might have some doubts or you got some questions, or maybe you know you're needing some assistance in filling out the application, I want to invite you to stop in. We're going to have redistricting office hours. This is online, virtual. So on Saturday, this weekend, Saturday, July 9th, from 11 to 1 p.m., you can log on. This is the link. I'll put this link in the chat, and we'll also post it on the Facebook page, which I mentioned is 2020 Census MC. And we will invite you to join in. It'll be a drop-in, so you can just come on in and say, hey, Rosemary, I need some help with filling out my application. Or if you have some questions throughout the application that you're not sure of something, and if that's holding you back from submitting your application, you'll be able to join this office hours online. So come on in, and it's virtual. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from the comfort of your home. You don't have to go anywhere physically. You can do this on Zoom. And with that, I did see that there's a question about where will this webinar be posted to. It'll be posted to the Facebook page. It'll also be posted on the website, on the webpage, the redistricting webpage. So I'll also put that in the chat before we go. And then also, the county is not an entity doing the redistricting process. So yeah, we want to definitely remind you all that you can support the county process. There are other redistricting processes happening, that's correct. Several cities who vote by districts, who are elected by districts. For example, the city of Salinas is a district elected body in the city council. The schools, some school districts, the MCOE, the Monterey County Office of Education, is also going through a redistricting process. And then, oh, did I get the date wrong? July 9th is a Friday and not Saturday. I apologize. I am looking at Saturday because I know that a lot of people work and sometimes it's hard. So that's right. It'll be July 10th. It's on Saturday from 11 to 1. Thank you for correcting me on that one. Yes, and so another question here is that they would like to be very much involved, but if you would be disqualified if you were moved from one party to another. I again, as I mentioned before, don't let that hold you back. Submit your application, and then we can look at that and determine whether if that's a legal disqualification, and it might not be. So please go ahead and submit your application. So with that, I want to just thank everyone who joined this evening. I want to give a huge thank you and virtual hug to Mary Claypool from the NAACP, Sharon Miller from the League of Women Voters, and Andrew Sandoval from LULAC, the district. So I just want to really appreciate all of you for taking the time to join us here tonight. And with that, I will go ahead and close out the session and put this on, put the links on here. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, Rosemary, for doing this.
Yes.
Thank you, Rosemary.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Putting it in the chat.